Battlefield is a series of first-person shooter video games developed by Swedish company EA DICE and is published by American company Electronic Arts. It started out on Microsoft Windows and OS X with Battlefield 1942, which was released in 2002. The Battlefield itself has released several games starting from Battlefield 1942, 2002, to the most recent Battlefield 2042, 2021. So how does the Battlefield evolve to become a popular game? Let's find out. Battlefield 1942, 2002. Battlefield 1942 is a 2002 first-person shooter video game developed by DICE and published by Electronic Arts for Microsoft Windows and Mac OS X. The game can be played in single-player mode against the video game AI or in multiplayer mode against players on the internet or in a local area network. It is a popular platform for mod developers, with many released modifications that alter the gameplay and theme. In-game, players assume the role of one of 5 classes of infantry: scout, assault, anti-tank, medic, and engineer. Players also have the ability to fly various World War II fighter aircraft and bombers, navigate capital ships, submarines, and aircraft carriers, man coastal artillery defenses, drive tanks, APCs, and jeeps, and take control of anti-aircraft guns and mounted machine guns. Each battle takes place on one of several maps located in a variety of places and famous battlefields in all of the major theaters of World War II, the Pacific, European, North African, Eastern, and Italian fronts. Combat is between the Axis powers and the Allies. The location determines which nation-specific armies are used. For example, on the Wake Island map, it is Japan versus the United States, while on the El Alamein map, it is Germany versus the United Kingdom. The maps in Battlefield 1942 are based on real battles and are somewhat realistically portrayed. Upon release, Battlefield 1942 received generally favorable reviews, with particular praise directed towards the innovative gameplay, multiplayer, and World War II theme. The game went on to perform well commercially, with over 3 million copies sold by 2004. Since its release, the game has spawned numerous sequels and spin-offs, which became part of what ultimately would become the Battlefield game series. Battlefield Vietnam, 2004. Battlefield Vietnam is a first-person shooter video game. It is the second installment in the Battlefield franchise after Battlefield 1942. The game was developed by a Canadian company DICE Canada and published by Electronic Arts. Battlefield Vietnam takes place during the Vietnam War and features a large variety of maps based on historical settings, such as the Ho Chi Minh Trail, Battle of Hue, Ia Drang Valley, Operation Flaming Dart, the Battle of Khe Sanh and Fall of Saigon. Battlefield Vietnam has the same point-by-point objectives as Battlefield 1942. In most playable maps, the objective is to occupy control points around the map to enable allies and controllable vehicles to spawn. Similar to other Battlefield games, spawn tickets, reinforcements, play a vital role in defeating the opposing team. Battlefield Vietnam features a form of asymmetrical warfare gameplay. The two teams, United States and North Vietnam, are given different equipment and vehicles, making the United States rely more on heavy vehicles and the Vietnamese rely more on infantry tactics. The United States, for instance, can employ heavy tanks, helicopters, and bombers, whereas the Vietnamese are forced to rely on anti-tank/anti-aircraft weapons in order to stop the United States side. The gameplay was intended to reflect the actual conditions of the war. A CP hole feature for the Vietnamese, effectively a mobile spawn point, representative of the vast tunnel networks the Vietnamese used in the actual war, was implemented in order to balance the gameplay. Battlefield 2, 2005. Battlefield 2 is a first-person shooter video game, developed by DICE and published by Electronic Arts for Microsoft Windows in June 2005 as the third game in the Battlefield franchise. Players fight on a modern battlefield, using modern weapon systems. Battlefield 2 is a first-person shooter with some strategy and tactical shooter elements. The single-player aspect features missions that involve clashes between United States Marines, China, and the fictional Middle Eastern coalition. The multiplayer aspect of the game allows players to organize into squads that come under the leadership of a single commander to promote teamwork. The story takes place in the early 21st century during a fictional world war between various power blocs: China, the European Union, the fictional Middle Eastern coalition, MEC, Russia, and the United States. The game takes place on different fronts, as the Middle East and China are being invaded by the United States and Europe forces, and the United States is being invaded by Chinese and MEC forces. On June 30, 2014, the multiplayer master server was shut down alongside other GameSpy-powered titles. However, fan-created mods quickly restored online functionality with alternative servers. In 2017, Electronic Arts demanded the takedown of the modified versions of Battlefield 2 on alternate servers, distributed by a group known as Revive Network, as an infringement of their copyrights. Battlefield 2 Modern Combat, 2005. Battlefield 2 Modern Combat is a first-person shooter video game in the Battlefield series, developed by DICE and published by Electronic Arts. Modern Combat is the first Battlefield game for video game consoles and also was a standalone side-story expansion for Battlefield 2 which was released exclusively on Windows that same year. The game was initially released for PlayStation 2 and Xbox in 2005. In 2006, an updated version of the game was released for the Xbox 360 featuring improved graphics and online features. A PlayStation Portable version was developed by EA Bright Light and announced in 2005, but was cancelled. Battlefield 2 Modern Combat multiplayer on Xbox was shut down on April 15, 2010. As of June 30, 2014, all Xbox, Xbox 360, and PlayStation 2 servers are offline. Battlefield 2142, 2006. Battlefield 2142 is a 2006 first-person shooter video game developed by DICE and published by Electronic Arts. It is the fourth game in the Battlefield series. Battlefield 2142 is set in 2142, depicting a war known as the Cold War of the 22nd century, in which two military superpowers, the European Union and Pan-Asian Coalition, battle for the remaining unfrozen land during a new ice age. The game was designed primarily for multiplayer gameplay and allows for a maximum of 64 players on a server or a maximum of 16 players in single-player mode against bots in Conquest mode. It has its own ranking system to keep track of the user's statistics similar to the one used in its predecessor. It opens up new categories of vehicles and weapons not seen in Battlefield 2. Battlefield 2142 has an unlock system that allows the player to choose a new unlock every time they achieve a new rank instead of forcing the player to purchase items. A booster pack called Northern Strike contains new maps, unlocks, and vehicles. A deluxe edition was released that contains Battlefield 2142 and Northern Strike. In July 2014, all online components of the game were deactivated following the shutdown of GameSpy. The game's online multiplayer was revived by the Project Revive community in 2016. However, the project was shut down in 2017 following a legal notice from Electronic Arts. The game's online multiplayer are currently only playable with the Community 2142 Reclamation project formed after the shutdown of Project Revive. Battlefield Bad Company, 2008. Battlefield Bad Company is a first-person shooter developed by DICE for the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, and part of the Battlefield series. It was released in North America on June 23, 2008, followed by a European release on June 26. The game was hinted at just before the release of Battlefield 2, and announced 16 months later. The player controls protagonist Private Preston Marlowe and his exploits to steal gold from mercenaries along with his squad, in the midst of a war between the United States and Russia. Bad Company is unique in the series in that it was developed for consoles and features a full single-player campaign with characters, as opposed to previous titles which were mostly released for Windows and featured warfare focused on multiplayer with large numbers of players. The game also emphasizes squad-based combat, while retaining the vehicular and large-scale warfare of the series in multiplayer. The game applies some new features to the franchise, including a highly destructible environment such as blowing walls through houses. DICE debuted its studio-developed Frostbite engine with the game, which allows for high destructibility, and the engine has since been updated to run later titles. Bad Company received mostly positive reviews from critics, who praised the story's humor and technical aspects such as sound, atmosphere, and the game engine. Battlefield Heroes, 2009. Battlefield Heroes was a 2009 third-person shooter video game developed by DICE initially and further developed by Easy Studios, published by Electronic Arts for Microsoft Windows. Battlefield Heroes was a third-person, free-to-play spin-off of the Battlefield military shooter series, designed to be less demanding on computer specifications than the previous games of the series. This change was made to increase the player base, as well as to match players of similar skill levels together for fairer play. Heroes were the first Battlefield game to be made under Electronic Arts' new Play for Free model, which saw the game released for free with revenue generated from advertising and micropayments. Advertisements appeared on the website and the front end of the game, although none appeared while playing, while micropayments were able to be made for additional items to customize the appearance of players' avatars or to buy stronger weapons. Furthermore, purchasable Play 4 free funds, formerly known as Battle Funds, were usable for redeeming rate boosts to experience points along with other items. Battlefield Bad Company 2, 2010. Battlefield Bad Company 2 is a first-person shooter video game developed by the Swedish firm DICE and published by Electronic Arts for Microsoft Windows, PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, iOS, and Kindle Fire systems. It is a direct sequel to Battlefield Bad Company and is part of the Battlefield game series. It was released worldwide in March 2010. The iOS port was released on the App Store on December 16, 2010. A Kindle Fire version was released in June 2012. The game is primarily a squad-level first-person shooter based in a contemporary modern warfare setting. Additionally, the game includes a single-player campaign, where the player reassumes the role of Preston Marlowe, the protagonist of the original game. The game's Frostbite 1.5 engine allows for destructible environments. Multiplayer maps, which allow for 5 different game modes, contain a wide selection of vehicles, aircraft, and emplacements. The game was met with positive reception from critics, garnering a mean of 88 from aggregator Metacritic for the Xbox 360 and PS3 versions, and 87 for the PC version. Battlefield 3, 2011. Battlefield 3 is a 2011 first-person shooter video game developed by DICE and published by Electronic Arts for Microsoft Windows, PlayStation 3, and Xbox 360. It is a direct sequel to 2005's Battlefield 2. In Battlefield 3's campaign, players take on the personas of several military roles: a United States Marine, AF divided by a -18F Super Hornet weapon systems officer, an M1A2 Abrams tank operator, and a Spetsnaz GRU operative. The campaign takes place in various locations and follows the stories of 2 characters, Henry Blackburn and Dmitry Mayakovsky. The game sold 5 million copies in its first week of release and received mostly positive reviews. Battlefield 3 features combined arms battles across single-player, cooperative, and multiplayer modes. It reintroduces several elements absent from the Bad Company games, including fighter jets, the prone position, and 64-player battles on PC. To accommodate the lower player count on consoles, the ground area is limited for Xbox 360 and PS3, though fly space remains the same. Battlefield 4, 2013. Battlefield 4 is a 2013 first-person shooter video game developed by DICE and published by Electronic Arts. The game was released in October and November for Microsoft Windows, PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One, and is the sequel to 2011's Battlefield 3, taking place 6 years later during the fictional War of 2020. Battlefield 4 was met with positive reception for its multiplayer mode, gameplay, and graphics, but was criticized for its single-player campaign and for numerous bugs and glitches in the multiplayer. It was a commercial success, selling over 7 million copies. The game's heads-up display is composed of 2 compact rectangles. The lower left-hand corner features a mini-map and compass for navigation, and a simplified objective notice above it. The lower right includes a compact ammo counter and health meter. The top right displays kill notifications of all players in-game. On the Windows version of the game, the top left features a chat window when in multiplayer. The minimap, as well as the main game screen, shows symbols denoting 3 kinds of entities: blue for allies, green for squad mates, and orange for enemies. This applies to all interactivity on the battlefield. Battlefield 4 options also allow colorblind players to change the on-screen color indicators to Trite Anomaly, Deuter Anomaly, and Prot Anomaly. Battlefield Hardline, 2015. Battlefield Hardline is a first-person shooter video game developed by Visceral Games and published by Electronic Arts. It was released in March 2015 for Microsoft Windows, PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, Xbox 360, and Xbox One. Unlike the previous games in the Battlefield series, Hardline focuses on crime, heists, and policing elements instead of military warfare. Upon release, the game received a mixed critical reception, with critics praising the game's multiplayer mode, accessibility, and voice acting while criticizing the game's plot, stealth, and narrative. It is the final Battlefield game to be released for the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 platforms. It was also the last game to be developed by Visceral Games before the company shut down in 2017. The focus of the game is the war on crime, breaking away from the military setting that characterized the series. As such, the main factions in Hardline are the police special response units and criminals. Players have access to various military-grade weapons and vehicles, such as the Lenko Bearcat, as well as police equipment such as tasers and handcuffs. Battlefield 1, 2016. Battlefield 1 is a first-person shooter game developed by DICE and published by Electronic Arts. It is the 10th installment in the Battlefield series and the first main entry in the series since Battlefield 4 in 2013. It was released for PlayStation 4, Windows, and Xbox One in October 2016. Battlefield 1 received positive reviews from critics, who saw it as an improvement over the series' previous installments, Battlefield 4 and Battlefield Hardline. Most of the praise was directed toward its World War I setting, single-player campaigns, multiplayer modes, visuals, and sound design. The game was a commercial success, selling over 15 million copies. Similar to its predecessors, Battlefield 1 is a first-person shooter game that emphasizes teamwork. It is set in the period of World War I and is inspired by historical events. Players can make use of World War I weapons, including bolt-action rifles, submachine guns, automatic and semi-automatic rifles, artillery, flamethrowers, and poison gas to combat opponents. Battlefield 5, 2018. Battlefield 5 is a first-person shooter game developed by DICE and published by Electronic Arts. It is the 11th main installment in the Battlefield series and the successor to 2016's Battlefield 1 and was released for Microsoft Windows, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One on November 20, 2018. Those who pre-ordered the deluxe edition of the game were granted early access on November 15, 2018, and Origin Access Premium subscribers on PC received access to the game on November 9, 2018. The game is based on World War II and is a thematic continuation of its World War I-based precursor Battlefield 1. The pre-release reception of the game was mixed, with the announcement trailer causing significant backlash from some fans of the series. Upon release, Battlefield 5 received generally favorable reviews from critics, who praised its gameplay and new multiplayer modes but criticized it for its shortage of content at launch and lack of innovation. The game sold 7.3 million copies by the end of 2018 but was a commercial disappointment for Electronic Arts. Battlefield 2042, 2021. Battlefield 2042 is a first-person shooter, developed by DICE and published by Electronic Arts. It is the 12th main installment in the Battlefield series and was released on November 19, 2021, for PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Windows, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X/S. Unlike previous games in the series, Battlefield 2042 is solely multiplayer and does not have a single-player campaign. It features support for cross-platform play, a first in the series. Battlefield 2042 received mixed reviews from critics and a negative reception from players for its technical issues, lack of features, and certain changes to the gameplay. The game failed to meet the sales expectations of Electronic Arts. Similar to its predecessors, Battlefield 2042 is a multiplayer-focused first-person shooter. As the game is set in the near future, it features futuristic weapons and gadgets like deployable turrets and drones, as well as vehicles that players can control. Players can request a vehicle airdrop to any location. The game introduced a Plus system which allows players to customize their weapons on the spot. The class system is significantly overhauled and removes the 4 defined classes from previous games. Instead, players can assume control of a specialist who falls under the 4 traditional Battlefield gameplay classes of Assault, Engineer, Medic, and Recon. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like this video, give us a like, comment and subscribe, and see you on the next video.